Hello, she told me. He makes me feel alive. With you I just feel secure. I replied, then go chase that feeling. She did. For 3 months. Until he got bored and walked away. Then she came back, hoping to return. I told her sorry. All I ever offered was stability. And this place isn't safe for you anymore. I closed the door. And I never opened it again. My name is Dylan. I am 31 and I work as an office manager for a mid-sized insurance company in Denver. My days are mostly schedules, paperwork, and solving small problems before they turn into big ones. It is steady work and it fits the kind of routine I like. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment on the west side of the city. Nothing fancy but clean and quiet. Most of my week follows the same rhythm. Work, gym, groceries, repeat. My girlfriend Millie is 28. We were together a little over 2 years when all of this happened. Millie works as a freelance photographer. Weddings, lifestyle shoots, brand campaigns, whatever pays that month. Her schedule is the complete opposite of mine. Late nights, weekend events, constant travel around the state. We did not officially live together, but she stayed at my place most weekends and sometimes several nights during the week. For a long time, I thought the balance worked. My life was structured and predictable. Hers was spontaneous and social. I figured the difference kept things interesting. Millie used to say my apartment felt calm compared to the chaos of her work. After a long shoot, she would show up exhausted, drop her gear by the couch, and say my place felt like a reset button. Back then I took that as a compliment. But sometime during the second year, the way she talked about my life started shifting. At first it came out as little comments that sounded like jokes, but never really felt like jokes. She would say things like I schedule my free time the same way I schedule staff meetings. Or that dating me sometimes felt like being part of a routine instead of part of a story. One night, she told me my life ran too smoothly. I asked her what that meant. Millie shrugged and said I was reliable, but not exactly exciting. She had this way of saying things that sounded casual, but carried just enough edge to make you question yourself. Like she was pointing out an obvious flaw that I somehow missed. Around the same time, she started mentioning a guy she had recently met through a photography project. His name was Jason. At first it sounded normal. Just another creative she collaborated with on a shoot. Someone who knew a lot of people in the local scene. But over the next few weeks his name started showing up in almost every story she told. And eventually Millie sat across from me at my kitchen table and said something that completely changed the direction of our relationship. Millie said it very casually, like she was commenting on the weather. We were sitting at my kitchen table on a Tuesday night. I had just finished making pasta after work. She had come over straight from a shoot and still had her camera bag leaning against the wall. She looked tired but wired at the same time. That was when she brought up Jason again. At that point I had already heard a lot about him. According to Millie, he was spontaneous, creative, always doing something interesting. He organized pop-up shoots, late-night editing sessions, random road trips for photos. The way she talked about him always had this extra energy to it. I did not love that, but I also was not the type to panic every time my girlfriend mentioned another guy. Then she said something that made the room go quiet. She told me Jason made her feel alive. Not in a joking way. Not sarcastically. Just a flat statement like she had been thinking about it for a while. Then she followed it with the part that actually mattered. She said with me, she mostly felt secure. Millie said it like those two things were opposites. Alive with him. Secure with me. She even smiled a little when she said it, like she expected me to understand. For a second, I honestly thought she was about to say something like how lucky she was to have both excitement in her work and stability in her relationship. Instead, she leaned back in the chair and said she had been thinking a lot lately about what she wanted out of life. That is never a good sentence to hear from someone you are dating. I asked her directly what she was trying to tell me. Millie did not hesitate. She said she felt like she was settling into something comfortable with me when maybe she should still be exploring life. Those were her exact words. Exploring life. She said Jason reminded her how exciting things could be when you did not plan everything ahead of time. At that point, the implication was obvious. She was basically asking for permission to see where things went with him. Millie never used the word cheating. She framed it like she was just being honest about her feelings. Like she deserved credit for transparency. The entire conversation had this strange tone where she acted like she was presenting a thoughtful life decision instead of telling her boyfriend she wanted to chase another guy. I listened to everything without interrupting. Then when she finished talking, I gave her a very simple answer. And it was not the one she expected. I let Millie finish her explanation without interrupting. She talked for a while. About how life should feel exciting. About how she was still young. about how Jason made things feel unpredictable in a good way. The whole time she spoke like this was some kind of personal growth conversation. Like she was bravely confronting her feelings instead of telling me she wanted to try things with another guy. When she finally stopped, the apartment went quiet. She looked at me like she was waiting for a long emotional response. Maybe she expected me to argue, or convince her to stay, or promise to become more exciting. Instead, I just nodded once. Then I said something very simple. I told her if that was what she needed, then she should go chase that feeling. Millie blinked at me like she had misheard. I repeated it calmly. If Jason made her feel alive, she should go see where that went. The expression on her face shifted from surprise to confusion. I do not think she expected the door to open that easily. For a second, she tried to soften the conversation. She said she was not necessarily leaving forever. She just needed space to figure things out. That part annoyed me more than anything else. It sounded like she wanted to keep me parked safely in the background while she tested something new. So I made the boundary very clear. I told her that was not how this worked. If she wanted to see what life with Jason felt like, she was free to do that. But the relationship with me would end right there. No pauses. No waiting period. No safety net. Millie frowned like I was being unreasonable. She said I was making things too extreme. I told her it was actually very simple. She had just explained that another man made her feel more alive than I did. That is not something a relationship just shrugs off. There was a long, quiet moment after that. Then I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. I told her she should probably grab her things. Millie stared at me like she was still trying to decide if I was serious. But after a few seconds, she slowly picked up her camera bag. When she reached the doorway, she paused. She asked if I was really going to throw away 2 years over one conversation. I told her I was not the one throwing it away. She stepped into the hallway a minute later. And that was the last time I saw her for about 3 months. The first week after Millie left felt strangely quiet. Not painful, just quiet. When you date someone for 2 years, you get used to their presence in small ways. Their shoes by the door. Their random stuff in your kitchen. The sound of their phone buzzing on the couch. All of that disappeared overnight. But honestly, my daily life did not change that much. I still woke up at the same time. Still went to the office. Still handled scheduling, payroll questions, and the constant stream of small issues that come with running an office. Routine has a way of stabilizing things. A few of my friends asked what happened because Millie used to show up at group dinners sometimes. I kept the explanation simple. We wanted different things, and the relationship ended. No long story. No drama. Meanwhile, Millie clearly moved on fast. I know that because about 2 weeks after the breakup, I saw a photo pop up online. A mutual friend had liked it, and the algorithm pushed it onto my feed. Millie and Jason were standing together at some rooftop bar downtown. She had her arm around him, and that big, energetic smile she used whenever she wanted a photo to look spontaneous. The caption said something about late-night creativity and living in the moment. I looked at it for maybe 5 seconds, and then closed the app. That was pretty much the last time I checked anything related to her. Over the next few months, I heard occasional updates through the same mutual friend circle. Not gossip exactly. Just the normal background information that travels when people move in overlapping social groups. From what I gathered, Millie and Jason jumped straight into that exciting lifestyle she talked about. Lots of events. Lots of late nights. Random trips for shoots and parties with other photographers and creatives. Exactly the kind of life she had described at my kitchen table. Apparently, they were inseparable for a while, which honestly made sense. When two people are chasing the same adrenaline, things can feel very intense at the beginning. 3 months passed like that. Then one Saturday evening, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I still recognized instantly. It was Millie, and the tone of the message was very different from the last time I saw her walking out of my apartment. The message showed up on a Saturday evening while I was at home catching up on some work emails. It simply said, "Hey." No explanation. No context. Just hey. I stared at the screen for a second because it had been 3 months of complete silence. After she walked out of my apartment that night, neither of us contacted the other. I had assumed that was the end of it. Part of me considered ignoring the message completely. That probably would have been the cleanest option. But curiosity got the better of me. So I replied with a short message asking what was going on. Millie answered almost immediately. She asked if we could talk. That alone already told me something had changed. Millie was never someone who asked carefully for conversations. During our relationship, she usually just said whatever was on her mind. Now the tone felt cautious. I asked what she wanted to talk about. There was a pause for a few minutes. Then the next message came through. She said things with Jason had not worked out. No big explanation attached. Just that sentence. I sat back in my chair and honestly laughed a little. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. When someone builds a relationship entirely around excitement and impulse, it usually burns fast. Still, I kept my response neutral. I told her I was sorry things did not work out. That probably was not the answer she expected either. A few seconds later, another message arrived. This one was longer. Millie said the last few months had been confusing and intense. She admitted that maybe she had gotten caught up in the thrill of something new. Then she wrote something that made her real intention obvious. She said she had been doing a lot of thinking about what really matters in life. And apparently stability had started sounding a lot more appealing again. After that message came the question I already knew was coming. She asked if we could meet and talk in person. She said maybe we had ended things too quickly. Maybe there was still something worth fixing. Reading that message felt strange. 3 months earlier, she had walked out of my apartment chasing the feeling of being alive with someone else. Now she was texting the guy who made her feel secure. But the most interesting part was what she did not say. She never once mentioned apologizing. And that told me everything I needed to know about how she still saw the situation. I read Millie's message a few times. Not because it was complicated, just because it confirmed exactly what I expected. 3 months earlier, she had told me another guy made her feel alive, while I only made her feel secure. Now the exciting guy was gone, and suddenly security looked valuable again. Her message kept going. She said she had been thinking about us a lot lately. About how stable things felt when we were together. About how calm life was when she stayed at my place. The way she described it made it sound like she was talking about a comfortable hotel she had checked out of too early. Not a relationship she chose to walk away from. What stood out the most was what she never said. There was no actual apology. No acknowledgement that she had crossed a line. Just a lot of talk about reflection and perspective and how people sometimes make mistakes when they chase excitement. Then she repeated the same request. She asked if we could meet in person and talk things through. Maybe we could rebuild something. Maybe we had both reacted too quickly that night. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the message for a while. The funny part was I did not feel angry. Mostly I just felt clear about the situation. Millie had made a decision 3 months earlier. She chose the guy who made her feel alive. That was fine. People make choices. But choices also have consequences. I picked up my phone and typed one final response. I told her I hoped she figured out what she was looking for. Then I added something simple. I said that all I ever offered her was stability, and she had already made it clear that was not what she wanted. After I sent the message, I waited a few seconds. The typing bubble appeared almost immediately. Millie was clearly ready to argue her way back into the conversation. I did not read whatever she sent next. Instead, I opened her contact profile. Then I blocked the number. No dramatic speech. No long explanation. Just a quiet decision that the conversation was already finished. Blocking Millie's number should have been the end of it. At least that was the plan. For about 2 weeks it actually worked that way. Life went back to normal. Work, gym, groceries, repeat. The same routine I had before she decided she needed something more exciting. Then one evening there was a knock on my apartment door. I was not expecting anyone. Most of my friends text before showing up, and my neighbors usually keep to themselves. So the knock already felt unusual. When I opened the door, Millie was standing in the hallway. She looked different from the last time I saw her. Not in a dramatic way, just tired. The kind of tired you get when a lot of late nights catch up with you at once. She was holding her phone in one hand. The first thing she said was that she thought I might have blocked her. I told her that was correct. Millie gave a small laugh like I had just made some kind of stubborn joke. Then she said she figured it would be easier to just come talk in person. That sentence alone already told me she had not really understood what blocking someone means. She started explaining things before I even responded. According to her, the situation with Jason had fallen apart pretty quickly. She said he was fun at first, but eventually it became obvious he was not interested in anything serious. Apparently, once the novelty wore off, he moved on. She said it like she was describing a disappointing restaurant experience. Then she switched to talking about us. Millie said the last few months had made her realize something important. Stability actually mattered more than she thought. She looked past me into the apartment while she said that, like she already expected to walk back inside. Then she asked if we could start fresh. Like the last 3 months had just been some temporary detour. I listened to everything without interrupting. When she finally stopped talking, I gave her a calm answer. And it was not the one she wanted to hear. I stood in the doorway while Millie finished talking. She had clearly rehearsed some version of that speech before coming over. Words like perspective and realizing what matters kept coming up. According to her, the last few months had taught her a lot. Jason was exciting at first, but unreliable. Too spontaneous. Too chaotic. She said it like those traits had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Then she looked straight at me and said something that almost sounded like a compliment. She said she finally understood how rare stability actually is. Millie gestured toward my apartment when she said it, like the place itself represented the lesson she had just learned. Then she asked if we could start again. Fresh start. Clean slate. Her words. The way she said it made it clear she believed this was a reasonable request. Like relationships could be paused, tested against other options, and then resumed if the alternative did not work out. I let her finish completely before responding. Then I shook my head. Not aggressively. Just a simple no. I told her the problem was not Jason. The problem was the decision she made 3 months earlier. She had looked at me and explained that another man made her feel alive while I only made her feel secure. That statement does not disappear just because the exciting option failed. Millie immediately tried to reframe it. She said people sometimes need to make mistakes to understand what they really want. I told her that might be true, but mistakes still come with consequences. Then I repeated something I had already told her in my message. All I ever offered her was stability. Back then she made it clear that stability was not enough. Millie frowned and said things were different now. I told her I believed that. But the situation was different for me too. This place was never meant to be a backup plan someone returns to after their exciting option runs out. For the first time since arriving, she looked genuinely frustrated. Like the conversation was not following the script she had expected. She asked if I was really going to throw everything away over one bad decision. Millie stood in the hallway waiting for me to change my mind. You could see it in the way she held herself. Like this conversation still had another phase where I would soften and invite her back inside. She asked again if I was really going to end things permanently over what she called one mistake. I told her it was not one mistake. It was a decision. 3 months earlier, she had looked me in the eye and explained exactly how she felt. Another guy made her feel alive. I made her feel secure. At the time, she clearly believed alive was the better option. So I reminded her of something she seemed to be forgetting. I had not fought her when she made that choice. I did not argue or try to convince her to stay. I opened the door and told her to go chase that feeling. And she did. For 3 months. Millie shifted her weight like she was trying to think of another angle. She said things were different now. She had learned something about what actually matters. She said she realized security is more important than excitement. Not that she valued me. Not that she regretted hurting me. Just that security had become more appealing after the exciting option disappeared. I nodded slowly. Then I told her the truth as plainly as possible. I said I hoped she eventually finds whatever kind of life she is looking for. But this place was never meant to be a safe backup location after chasing something else. All I ever offered her was stability. And she already rejected that once. Millie stared at me for a few seconds like she was waiting for the conversation to continue. It did not. Finally, she asked if I was seriously not even willing to try again. I shook my head. Then I said something very simple. This place is not safe for you anymore. Not because I hated her. Because she had already proven she did not want what existed here. After that, I stepped back inside my apartment. I wished her a good night. Then I closed the door. I closed the door and stood there for a moment listening to the hallway. Millie did not knock again. There were no dramatic last words. No argument through the door. After a few seconds, I heard her footsteps move down the hallway toward the stairs. Then the building was quiet again. I walked back into the kitchen and sat down at the same table where that conversation had started 3 months earlier. It felt strange how neatly everything had come full circle. Back then, Millie had sat in that chair explaining how another guy made her feel alive while I only made her feel secure. At the time, she spoke about it like security was something boring people settle for. Something safe, but not worth choosing when something exciting appears. So I told her to go chase that feeling. And she did exactly that. For 3 months, she lived the life she thought she wanted. Late nights, spontaneous plans, the kind of energy that feels thrilling at the beginning. Until the guy providing that excitement got bored and moved on. Then suddenly stability started sounding valuable again. The problem is stability only works when both people actually choose it. It cannot be something you walk away from and then expect to reclaim later like nothing happened. Millie did not understand that when she knocked on my door. She thought the lesson she learned about security would somehow rewind everything back to where we were before. But relationships do not reset like that. When someone tells you directly that another person makes them feel more alive than you do, You have to believe them the first time. So I did. I opened the door and let her go find what she thought she wanted. 3 months later, she came back hoping the safe option would still be waiting. It was not. And for anyone wondering if I regret closing that door, I do not. Because the truth is simple. If someone leaves you to chase excitement somewhere else, you are not their partner. You are their backup plan. And I have never been interested in that role. Bye-bye.